Welcome back to the show, Socialize, where we socialize about stuff. For this one, I just wanted to talk about leftism in the United States and one of its main subcultures, I guess I would say, and that's tankies. I wanted to talk about them because it's something that has affected me personally, and I think it would be interesting to talk about it from my perspective because I've never thought about it or as an important thing. I've just seen it as my development, my thought process, but it could be interesting and it relates to other things I have to say about it. So here we go. The tankies I'm talking about are an online subculture of self-described authoritarian leftists who subscribe to the ideas of Marxism-Leninism or even Marxism-Leninism-Maoism, and they claim that authoritarianism is needed for any revolution to mitigate counter-revolution. While principal tankies have a lot of knowledge and history to share, I see some things about this specific subculture that harms the left more than advances politics. One aspect of the tanky subculture is a deranged detachment from reality, and this leads them to express their enthusiasm for vanguardism in a real patronizing way, especially in America. No one trusts a small group of weirdos to try to lead and control you, especially when they've never met you before or they've never seen that you've done anything before. This sort of false representation is already something we see every day in neoliberalism. What we need to do is bring consciousness to the masses themselves so that they can have the courage to fight for themselves. Some sort of vanguard, I guess, is necessary and will help with the contradictions of the United States, like how the working class is self-interested and are consumed by capitalist ideology, even though they could learn to help themselves. But the working class must emancipate itself. We need to solidly do that by becoming a revolutionary class that helps each other advance consciousness collectively and individually. And I think some Leninist principles can help with that, like organizing and making sure that the group agrees and that there's unity in action, I think is important. One way that we don't do this is with a weird dogmatism that certain tankies seem to have. For example, one time I was on Twitter, looking at leftists fight as you do, and I see this one tanky guy in the replies, it's always in the replies, defending the state of China by posting a picture of the Chinese constitution. And then he highlights a line that says, based on the alliance of workers and peasants, blah, 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 and then putting a little sunglasses emoji next to it as if this is an argument. Like, literally all he did was, it's like an American bringing up the Constitution, like saying, oh, see, look, it says here slavery is illegal, so wage slavery, you can't call it wage slavery. But, and they're doing the same thing here, but for a different state. It's like, okay, you're not loyal to the American state, but you're loyal to this other state? Like, I don't understand. It's not what communism is about. It's not what socialism is about. And what's the argument supposed to be? Like, I guess all you need is a red flag and the word workers or proletariat in your bio, and then There you go. You have uncritical support from the Tankies. Another argument that I see all the time on Twitter is the good cops narrative. I think that it's anti-dialectical because it's not engaging with those states in a dialogue. Like, it's one-sided. Like, the state is doing this, so I will defend it. You know? Again, it's the dogmatism and the Bibleization of sociology. The other deranged aspect of Tankies is this whole like Nazbol vortex and being okay with fascism. Like you see in these comment sections like of these weird YouTubers like Caleb Maupin, like edgy Reddit jokes and like 4chan, like toxic 4chan rhetoric that, like I said, is toxic for social spaces. I'm talking about this, and this all really affects me because I would say that I was a tankie, or like the title, I was a teenage tankie. But over time, I came to see how detached the subculture can be, and how a lot of the explanation for these behaviors is just alienation. I grew to be less and less convinced of statism and authoritarianism, and there were some certain contradictions that started to turn me off, like the dogmatism, aversion to criticism, and just the harm being done from the image of the left in general. Especially that Haas infrared guy. That guy's nuts. I don't know. That's all I can say. I mean, if you know what I'm talking about, then you've seen how wild the side of the internet can be and how like off-putting it must seem to people. But another thing is that I realized I don't live in fucking 20th century Russia. I live in America now, and I need to materially analyze as such. However, this is all to say that there are principled MLs who do not fall prey to dogmatism, and Marxism-Leninism does contain sharp and accurate critiques of the world, especially when criticizing others like social democrats or liberals for not challenging the structure of state power, or for not educating or politicizing the working class against the bourgeoisie. That is what we need. And that is where MLs are correct. They're correct about a lot of things. But it becomes a problem when you live in a bubble of identification and you actually need room for multiple sides of criticism and methods of attack to the status quo. Marrying yourself to a certain set of ideas and looking at the world only is not scientific. Also, anti-communism is not okay. Anti-communism is fundamental for fascism. And by spreading anti-communist disinformation, you help destroy your own movement. We must understand that socialism is an experimental process. We must understand that the world is a lab for our experiments of sociology and organization. To find socialism, we must let this experimentation process take place. Socialism is a very attractive idea that anyone can get attached to and project their ideas onto. But we must remember that no one has all the answers. One of the arguments from, I guess, Tankies that is good is how social democracy is complicit in imperialism. They don't really win reforms on their own. A lot of social democratic parties help implement austerity, and that they're just another form of liberal society which is based on slavery and colonialism and genocide of the working class and indigenous and peasants. But yeah, just to talk a little more about the things that make the left and quote unquote look bad, is like, weirdos like Caleb Maupin, with his connections to Alexander Dugin and it's just a part of that Nazbol vortex I was talking about earlier that can lead to people getting into fascism. But in this sort of like Russianized, like Russian aesthetic that tankies, like self-described tankies like Caleb Maupin and, Jackson Hinkle seem to perpetuate to benefit from, to create this alternative subculture. And, Max Blumenthal and Jimmy Dore and, the connections to Russia and like RT and stuff. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad to be a journalist, but repeating state media, I think, is not really a leftist thing to do at all. Like, it's not anti-status quo. It's just one state versus the other. And the PCI, Political Center for Innovation, I mean, that's a joke. Like, it's just a bunch of like weird white guys walking around a park and saying like FDR stuff. I don't know. It's just not good. It's just not a good look, and it's not really helping anybody. But anyway, I just think another problem is that to lie and call something socialist or socialism before it actually is a form of opportunism, and it's actually reactionary. We should acknowledge, reality and be honest when we are still within capitalism, but we just need to burst out of it. You just need to like burst out of the shell. So that's pretty much it. Those are my problems. Like, I don't have too many problems like ideologically, or I just think that the whole tanky subculture thing is like not very useful, and I think people should be more focused on not so much on aesthetic, but more on creating communities that help people, creating technologies, creating human technologies. That's what we should be focused on. Just trying to make things better, just trying to make things the best they can be, so that we can get to socialism, and then so that we could not have to rely on the state anymore, so that we could reach a state of self-reliance. Once we get to that technological point, we just need to make things as free and as socialist as they can be until it gets to that point, until we can get to like what people call communism. But yeah, we should avoid all this sectarian bullshit, like identity. It's basically like identity politics, like truly claiming like, oh, I am this and you are that, and you believe this and I believe that, and without investigation, it is identity politics. It is liberalism. It is idealism. It is metaphysics, and that should be kept separate from material matters, from public matters. That should be kept separate from things that we all share, because the material world is what we all share. We can all have different opinions on ideals and art and whatever, but the ground and the air and the water is what we all share. And this is not a problem just with tankies or whatever, but that was my journey. Like, I got radicalized into that, and I enjoyed a lot of it because of its aesthetic, because of the sickle and the whole Russia thing and the Soviet aesthetic. Like, I was kind of into that before I got into politics, because I was never really like an America person. Like in video games, like in Battlefield and stuff, I would choose the Russian side because they had cool uniforms and stuff, and patterns. And so that kind of, it hit me, it affected me. It got me into that because I was already, susceptible to that. And it got me believing all this stuff, saying all these things, acting like an asshole out in public, to my friends, like, oh yeah, I'm this and that, and I believe this and that, and when I think this and that, and you should blah blah, like, just because my brain got so attached to this idea because of aesthetics, because of subculture traits, there is true like Marxism, Leninism, whatever. There's principled people with like principled takes and blah, 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 and people out there doing like action, doing praxis in the streets, and, people in the Philippines and in India, in Latin America, South America. There's people, principled Marxist Leninists, Maoists too, who are like fighting on the ground using those Leninist principles to fight, because that's what they're doing now. They're in the fight now. We're not in the fight, and our fight is not going to be the same as it was in the past or even in other countries. We have to be scientific and look at what is the subject and what are the conditions. So yeah, the first half of this was a little more scripted, but then I kind of got off script, so it could seem a little jumbled. But I wanted to get an episode out there, and I just want to say, yeah, this is not just a problem with tankies. It's also anarchists and liberals and honestly, just like Europeans too. Like, if you go on Twitter, like a lot of them are very like, their whole identity is based around geography and like how different they are than other white people. It's twisted, it's screwed up. Like, why do you think that how you think about those things should affect the rights of everyone? That's like a personal matter. Fascists and right wingers, they lose reason. So we already know that. We don't need to talk about that. But yeah, even liberals and like not as leftists are very identity. I mean, they're also criticized for that, for being idpol and whatever, and focusing on race and trans and gender and stuff instead of class. So this is just a problem in general with our current thought technology, and we just need to have more people criticizing and communicating and socializing, so that we can all just become aware. We just need more just awareness of all this stuff, so we could all grow as humans and keep growing and try to reach the technological point where we could all be self-reliant. I just wanted to add a quick addendum on imperialism, because I may have not been explicit enough. Even though I was criticizing tankies and still showing respect for Marxism-Leninism, I may not have expressed my anti-imperialism enough, because I know that is a thing that MLs tend to criticize social democrats for, is for being imperialist, and I am not a social democrat. I do not agree with them. I do not like Bernie Sanders. I think they are the left wing. I even think that Stalin's quote, that social democracy is the left wing of fascism, certainly rings true a bit. It might be a bit hyperbolic, but I think it does ring true when you look at history. That social democracy has just been another tool to keep people happy, while the pendulum turns back right in the way that it always does. So yes, I'm not a social democrat, not an anarchist, but I do not like states. So that's why I'm not big on the whole Russia thing, the whole RT thing, and repeating Russian media stuff, because I just think that's not a leftist thing to do. I just think that's not principled. And also just fuck Jimmy Dore, dude. I think he's fucking stupid as fuck. Man, yeah, there's already a bunch of good videos. I think, was it Sean? Yeah, I think Sean, the Jimmy Dore is a liar video. That's pretty good. Yeah, he's just really doesn't really know how to read, I guess, and he's not very funny. So yeah, just wanted to make sure I'm not too misunderstood. I know I still will be because I'm not really the best at explaining myself. That's also what this is about. Just me. It's a journey of me trying to do that, and I hope I was able to get everything across. All right. Well, thank you for listening. Remember to check out the Patreon at patreon.com/social_eyes. Check out the Twitter at twitter.com/socializedcoms with 2 M's. Check out the YouTube channel. And of course, you're probably already listening to this on podcast platforms, but it's also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor. Shout out to Anchor, and wherever else you can find your podcasts.